folks, Darnell Mack here with Stamps by Kate. See, I'm working on a clamshell quilt. We've got a red rubber stamp. We've had it for many years now, and a quilt I've never made. So I'm excited to work on this one. This is a UFO that I found from about a year ago. Just love these modern fabrics with this clamshell, with the little pops of colors with a lot of the neutrals. It's a lot of fun. My goal is to make a whole bunch of these kind of squares, if you will, of the clamshells. There's 16, and I do them in sets of 4. I'll do these 4, these 4, these 4, and these 4, and they look like this. And then I put them together, and so once I've got a whole bunch of these slabs of fabric, I'll start putting them together to make a finished quilt. That way, as I start adding fabric to this scrappy thing, it can kind of evolve, and I can control the colors and still make it look really scrappy. So let's get started. I want to make my first 4 patch of the clamshells. And so you figure out the colors you want. And I'm going to put these 2 together and these 2 together. Once I've got these pairs stitched from here to here and here to here, then I'll put these 2 together like this and stitch from here to here, here to here. And that'll give me another set of 4. And so right now I'm just making a stack of these, and at some point I'll go back and make the slab of 4 of these patches. All right, so let's get started. I've stamped the back of my fabric. Some may find it easy if they mark the center points of these, and you can do that very easily by matching up this point here and just finger press that point right here. And that'll give you kind of a starting point and an ending point where you go to the midsection here. You can also make a template out of paper or some mylar and put the little tick marks in there as well. Whatever works for you. Most of the time I just use that little fold right there. So let's put these 2 together. Wait a minute, I want that like that. All right, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start from the right side and pen to the left, and actually that's the direction that I stitch. All right, so you check both sides. You can see the shinies here, and that's where I've got it on the line, and it's right here on this line. All right, and so here you can go right in the middle and do the middle point if you'd like. I tend to go just to the end. You do you as you get experienced with these. I've done probably about 25, 30 of these little 4 patches, and it took me about 5 or so to kind of get into the swing of it. So just take it slow. Slow and easy is going to win the race on these things. If I'm doing straight line stitching, I can go pretty fast and load up a lot of stitches on my needle. I find when I'm doing curves, I don't want to do that. All right, I'm going to pin that. Okay, good. It matches on the line. All right, so let's see how this goes. So I'm using my fingernails just to kind of push those pieces into place. Every now and then I like to put the pins in here just so the fabric doesn't walk on me. And I check the shinies on the other side from that straight pin to make sure that it's still lined up. All right, let's get started. I'm using some purple thread. Maybe it'll help you see this as I'm stitching along. So I'm starting my first stitch. I turn it over to, again, check for the shinies right there to make sure I've got it in the right place. Remember, when you're stamping and doing a running stitch with this method, you don't stitch into the seam allowance. That finishes my first stitch. And here's my second back stitch. Now my thread is locked. I'm pulling pretty tightly. And now I'm going to start with a small running stitch. Now, I recommend as you start with this, start maybe with a 1/2 inch. Load your needle up, check on the other side, make sure you're up on top of that line, and just pull it on through. It does go faster as you go. And then I just take a little back stitch. just so that it doesn't get wonky on me as I move to the next straight pin. Now, the straight pins are a guideline. So as you're working with any curves, just ease in the bulk on the back side so that it is smooth. And you can feel that with your thumb and your forefinger. So just be catching, be feeling around for where you might have a bulk of fabric right there that's going to end up in a pucker. All right, and so I'm going to do another little back stitch. And there I go. I'm still right there on top of the line. So that works well. Okay, let's keep on going. So I'm going to move my pin down a bit. Make sure I got that. Good, good. All right, and so I smooth it with my thumbnail and finger, and I take some more small stitches. Again, I'm not going to stitch into the seam allowance. Good. I'm not keeping the thread right there on top of that line. I'm usually okay if it's a couple of threads either way. You're on the bias, so it's going to stretch a bit, and that's perfectly fine. You know, you can kind of shove it into place. And of course, I'm doing a video, and it the thread gets all knotted. Well, that is reality. So let me see if I can get that out, and I cannot. Sadness. So, what are we to do? Well, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut the thread right there where that knot is, and I think there's enough space that I can thread my needle and just finish off that little stitch, because I've done some really good stitching over here and I don't want to do it again. And see, there's a good 12 inches right here. Happiness. So I go get an empty needle. Part of this is why I like to do back stitches every now and then, because stuff happens. And while I don't mind doing the curves, I don't want to do them a second time, especially if they were pretty at the very beginning. All right, do y'all know how hard it is to thread a needle when you're being videoed? All right, now I put a knot at the end of my thread. Of course, I'm using an 80 weight thread, but it kind of attaches that knot to my needle. Okay, so there we go. Oh, I'm going to be able to finish this entire half with this. Awesome. All right. Notice those little gathers right there. So I squish those out a bit, pull them out. Now, just for grins and giggles, I'm going to do a couple of back stitches right there. And now I keep on going. Now, I don't go past that needle because that would be in the seam allowance. I do 2 back stitches right there, check to make sure it's taut, and cut my thread. Ta-da! I love how these turn out. They just make me happy. So one of the things that, I don't know why, but these always like to go towards this part on the top and then go down, so I just give it a little press with a wooden iron, a little hand one, which is perfect. Now I've got my first pair. Let's do the second pair. I'm going to follow that same process. Pin here, checked for the shinies, I'm good. I'm going to go here on the second side. Check to make sure I've got it lined up, and it wasn't, so I'm going to scooch it around. All right, there we go. And here we go again. Now, I'm going to keep on using, nope, that's not going to work. Ah, all right. I start on this side of my straight pin. I don't want to be in the seam allowance. My first back stitch, my second back stitch. Now, if you find your straight pins get in the way, just stitch a bit. Make sure that it's on the line. And then do enough pinning that you maintain control of the fabric. That may be one pin, that may be two along that line. It's entirely up to you. It's whatever it makes it easy on you. I typically do one along the stitch line. I try to do it in the center. All right, I feel like I've loaded my needle enough up, so I'm going to pull that one through. Any gathers I'll smooth out. And there's my first back stitch and my second back stitch. Now I keep on with that running stitch. Now, if you're cutting on the cut line, if you match those up, you're pretty assured that your stitching line is going to be lined up. When we're doing hexagons and other shapes, that's not so critical, especially when you're fussy cutting. The clamshells, in doing these pieced curves, it can be tricky. I find that helps me. Maybe when I get done with this quilt, I may say otherwise, because then it may be automatic. Practice makes perfect, really. So I did a quick little back stitch there. Make sure I'm still on that line. And I'm feeling brave. I'm just going to go to my straight pin. And there we are. There's my first back stitch and my second back stitch. And I'll cut my thread and let's see what it looks like. Lovely. All right, so now I've got my two pairs. I'm going to take a break and come back and we'll put these four together and show you what that looks like. Thanks a bunch. We'll see you in a bit.